just want to welcome everybody. This is something that we're going to try this year to see if we like it. Clea has been running a D2 Fantasy League for 12 years. This is the 13th year. And so it's something that we thought would be interesting to do. And instead of just picking it in a chat room or something like that, we thought we would conduct the draft on video, and so that everybody could interact with each other, and then so we would have a better idea of kind of what was going on, and just thought it would be fun for people to see. I'm sure some of you are shocked to know that there are people out there that care so much about Division II that they actually operate and play in a fantasy league with each other, but it is the case. And in any case, Kyle, or Clee, as he's known, will be conducting the draft. The draft order is what you see on the side of the screen. So Mountaineer Magic is first. Wayne Cavati is next. Running Cat is third. Then Halfspan, Mule Man, Clee, K-Ferg, and then Fro. So those guys will be participating in this. I am just here for tech support, essentially. You guys know me from inside D2Football on Sunday nights, but I'll just be here for tech support. So as you see, the screen that is up are the selections, so that you'll know who's been picked and by who. But otherwise, Kyle, go ahead and get started and conduct your draft like you normally would.
All right. So I think everyone knows the rules by now. We want to say who the pick is, position, player, team. And Brandon's asked that we kind of give the stat line that you see on our stat sheet, if you can.
So, Kyle, one other thing. For anybody, I know the guys that are doing it know the rules, but I've never even participated in one. What are the rules as far as like your roster? Like who gets picked? Do we have a defense?
So the rules for this league is our starting lineup consists of one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, and then a flex spot for a running back or wide receiver. And then you have 4 bench spots. So each team will have 10 people total. No kickers or defenses. It's just too hard to calculate those out each week. So it's just quarterbacks, running backs, wide receivers. And you can have any combination of number of positions that you want. You can have 1 quarterback and 4 running backs and 5 wide receivers if you want. Or you can do it however you want. You just have to make sure you can field a starting lineup each week.
Okay. All right. Fantastic. All right. Sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead.
All right. So Mountaineer has our first pick. So you can give that whenever he's ready, and I'll take it off the draft stat sheet and add it to our draft board here.
Cool. With the first pick of the 2022 Division II Fantasy Draft, I'm going to select Josh Cummins, running back from Western Colorado University. His stats last year, he ran for just over 1,300 yards and had 17 rushing touchdowns on the season in the RMAC.
Perfect. So he's been taken off the stat sheet now, and Wayne is up to pick number 2.
All right, as the new guy here, I don't know how the trends go, but I don't think I can leave the 2021 Harlan Hill Trophy winner on the board. So I'm going to take Tyson Bagent after a 5,000-yard, 53 touchdown season from Shepherd, quarterback.
Wayne, I had Bagent on my fantasy team last year, so I figured he was going to go pretty quickly.
Keep in mind that Chris finished 7th last year.
Doesn't matter. He should serve you well. It wasn't his fault. It wasn't his fault.
All right, so Running Cat is up with the number 3 pick. You're on mute, Running.
Thank you.
There you go.
With the third pick in the 2022 Fantasy Football Draft, I have no choice but to take the Harlan Hill runner-up in T.J. Davis, quarterback from University of Nebraska Kearney, who had, 18 rushing touchdowns and a bunch of yards as the quarterback. How's that?
Good.
Great pick.
Good. All right.
He did pretty much everything last year.
He did.
All right. So Havs fan is up for his first pick.
All right, with the number 4 pick, I'm going to take wide receiver Danny Kittner out of Mary. Danny had 1,700 yards receiving to go along with 18 touchdowns and led all wide receivers in fantasy points last year.
And to put that into perspective, he averaged 10 more points per game than the next highest returning receiver. Right.
That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, if he can do that again this year, that gives me a leg up in that position.
Neil Mann up for your first pick.
All right, with the 5th pick in the D2 draft this year, I'm going dual threat. When TJ Davis came off the board, that made it very evident to me that Ivory Durham of Valdosta State, who his running and throwing prowess netted 36.39 fantasy points a game last year, carried the ball for 1,012 yards, 13 touchdowns, and he completed another boatload of passes for 3,425 yards and 32 scores. So Ivory Durham off the boards, pick number 5.
Awesome.
Perfect. So that gets me to my first pick. And I will be taking a guy who gets a lot of run on the D2 Fantasy Twitter account. I will be going with running back Toriano Clinton from UIndy. He had over 1,500 rushing yards and 17 touchdowns in only 9 games, averaged a little over 28 points per game last year. So I will be going with him for my first pick. And that brings up K-Ferg for his first pick of the day.
Well, y'all have taken all the people that I had as my first pick, so that's fine. I'll deal with it. I'll work through it. So I'm going to go with Dwayne McGee, running back from Lenore-Rhine, as my first pick. Somebody who in 11 games had 248 rushing attempts, had over 1,600 rushing yards. So really solid back. It's a good RB1 for me.
All right.
And then we have Fro up for 2 picks to end the first round and start the second round.
Oh boy, yeah, a lot of pressure here. Yeah, you guys took some of the guys I was hoping that would fall to me. I'm going to stick with Super Region 3 though. I'm going to go running back with the final pick in the first round of the 2022 D2 football draft. Running back TJ Cole from Ouachita Baptist. Last year he ran for over 1,500 yards and 17 touchdowns. Splitting time with another back, so hopefully he'll still get lots of those carries this year.
All right.
And okay, for the first pick in the second round of the D2 2022 fantasy football draft. Well, you're kind of putting me on the spot here. I'm going to go quarterback. Go with Brandon Alt from Bemidji State. He was kind of one of those guys that tore it up last year in fantasy, 46 touchdowns and over 4,200 passing yards. So I'm hoping he can capture some of that for me.
All right.
All right, so we're ready for K-Ferg's round 2 selection.
This is getting harder and harder already. I am going to go with Cooper Callis, Southwest Baptist. They always have somebody who can really rip it up, from the quarterback spot. In his particular case, he had over 3,700 yards passing, so in a very set system. So really looking forward to see what he can do this year.
Perfect. So that brings me up for my next selection, and I'm glad this guy fell to me. I will be taking a running back, Jordan Terrell from Barton. He was an MVP for my championship squad last year, and he averaged about 30 carries a game, and I love the volume he's almost guaranteed to get every week. So that's why I will be taking with my second pick. And that will bring up Muleman for his second round selection.
Well, we're going RMAC. We're going to get a hell of an engineer and take Michael Zeman from the Colorado School of Mines. 1,601 rushing yards and 21 touchdowns last year. So Zeman is off the board.
Perfect.
It's interesting. Last year we had him on Inside D2 Football, and we found out during the pre-show meeting that he was coming back this year. You know, everybody thought he was a senior last year, so it was we thought, everybody in the RMAC's going, oh no, you know. So it's a good pick.
That brings up Havs fan for his second round selection.
Well, let's see. I took Danny Kittner from Mary in the first round, so I think who throws the ball to him? Is that Logan Nelson? I'll take him as quarterback in the second round.
He's stealing my championship strategy from last year.
I got to point out, too, that Logan is a Billings Skyview product, and they play Air Force type wishbone. So it's been really interesting to see him develop.
Hey, Kyle, your strategy's been so well for you the past 12 years.
Hey, it worked last year. That's all that mattered.
Win one, and all of a sudden he's a genius, right?
Kyle's
Yeah.
like a cornerback. He'll give up 200 yards passing, knock down one, and do the swipe. Yep.
All it takes is one. My crown and scepter didn't come in time for the draft. All right, so Runnin is up for his second round selection.
Well, my second round selection is out of Ouachita Baptist, Kendall Givens, who had 775 rushing yards last year, but had 23 touchdowns on 130 total rushes. And I always like a Ouachita as well as a Harding running back, but both those schools are money on that.
Yes, they are. All right, that brings up Wayne for his second round pick.
Oops, I was on mute. I'm going to go down the list a little bit here just because I love the offense, and he always seems to find the end zone. So I'm going with Valdosta State running back Seth McGill here. 1,235 yards, 14 touchdowns last year.
Perfect. All right, so that brings us back to Mountaineer for two selections to finish off round two and then start round three.
Gotcha. So with my first pick in the second round, I'm going to select the reigning RMAC Offensive Player of the Year, CJ Sims out of New Mexico Highlands University. I think he's really going to be a pivotal part of the Cowboy offense with a new quarterback in Las Vegas. Last year, he had just over 1,100 yards of receiving and then 10 touchdowns. Really kind of a Tyreek Hill of the RMAC. And then with my next pick, I'm going to take a quarterback, Noah Mitchell out of California, University of Pennsylvania. And last year he had 25 touchdowns, 6 interceptions for 2,937 yards.
Perfect. That brings us back to Wayne for his third round pick.
You went entirely too quick. I haven't decided. There's so many good players out there still. Okay, hold on.
We can sit and talk. You know, it's when you're doing it in the chat room, you can have dead air and nobody cares. But
By the way, while we have a little time for him to decide, I'll give him a couple extra seconds. On that draft sheet, the guys who are highlighted in red are guys whose schools don't have rosters online yet, and I couldn't verify whether they are playing this year or not. So you can select them, but just keep in mind, select at your own peril in case they are not actually playing this year, because I couldn't verify if they're active for this fall or not.
Okay. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build the Shepherd Rams offense here, and I'm gonna dig down. I'm gonna take he was a freshman last year, wide receiver Ryan Beach. He had about, where is it? Yeah, 1,199 yards and 13 touchdowns, 16.46 points per game. And I got Bajan, so I got to get that double dip connection and just hope that 25 to 30% of Bajan's 50 touchdowns go to him.
All right, that gets us to Running's third round pick.
Great. Boy, now we're getting into the strategy part of things a little bit. And I'm going to select Oklahoma Baptist's Keelan Harris, who had 1,094 receiving yards, 16 touchdowns, best on the board left, and just under 21 points per game last year in a GAC conference that I think has some suspect defense at times. So I expect him to really break out in his junior year.
I think Harding would take offense to that.
I
With
just want to say
exception of
I was
Harding.
7th last year, and you chose him, and he was on my team.
All right, so we are back to Havs fan for his third round selection.
I'm going to take running back Jarick Scales out of Southern Arkansas. He, as a freshman last year, 1,475 yards rushing and 11 touchdowns. So I think he can improve on that this year.
Perfect. All right, Mealman up for his third round selection.
We're going to go wide receiver this time. Brendan Bolio from Bemidji State. 76 catches, 1,318 yard, and 13 scores.
And I was seeing how you guys are picking a quarterback and then the receiver. I was hoping he might be there since I picked Alt, but oh, dang it.
I gotta get this last name right. There's too many weird vowels. Hold on. All right. Well, he was going to be my selection, so that went out the window. Instead, I will take wide receiver from Northern State, Dakota Larson. He's returning as a graduate student. He had 65 catches for 914 yards and 11 touchdowns last year. But I'm thinking he's going to get quite a few more targets this year. So that is who I'm going to go with for my third round selection.
Let's go to Kayford.
And that brings up Kayford.
I am going to go with wide receiver Armani Carmichael from Minnesota Duluth, who was on my team last year, did very well for quite a bit of time, had 67 receptions, over 1,300 yards, receiving 11 touchdowns.
Boo. Boo.
That brings us to Fro for 2 picks to finish off round 3 and start round 4.
That was my pick. He started his career at Northwest, and that was one of the reasons I was going to go with my heart on that pick. So
I saved you from yourself.
Yeah. Well, now I have to. I was almost certain that he was going to be there. So
Fantasy is a heartbreaker.
Yeah. So let me go completely off the grid and go nuts here with a guy that wasn't even on this cheat sheet. I'm gonna go with another quarterback. I'm going to go with Ferris State's Malik Mitchell. He is kind of a dual threat. Us Bearcat fans saw that last year when we went up there. And I don't have his stats, and he shared time. He may share time with Evan Cummins again this year. I know Bearcat fans are not going to love me for taking a Ferris State guy, but I think he could be he could hopefully lead my team and be a good second quarterback for me.
Hey, Fro, I'm gonna get a billboard outside Maryville, and I'm gonna post that you just took him outside of football town, Missouri. Anyway, so just give you some love there, man.
Yeah, no. I'm sure on my podcast, somebody's coach, player, somebody's going to give me a hard time about that. So,
Has everyone been watching, speaking of Ferris State quarterbacks, Jared Barnhart as wide receiver for the Falcons do extremely well this preseason?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, he's a great athlete, though. So, to do what he did, to transition from lacrosse to football is pretty amazing. So I kind of thought like that was a reason to stop doubting him. So it's less surprising to me than it would have been a year ago at this time if you would have said all this happened. But it is.
If he was
Wait,
playing
he
for the
played
Patriots,
lacrosse?
he'd be getting a lot of Danny Amendola comparisons if he was on New England.
Yep. Although he's a
No,
little
but
bigger.
he wouldn't get Amendola comparisons because he can probably run 4.6 or 4.5 in 40. I don't think Amendola can break 5 seconds.
All right,
That's the
Fro,
Patriots contract.
Fro, we can take your first pick in the 4th round when you're ready.
okay, yeah. I was sitting here trying to decide what receiver I'm going to take, and I think I'm going to go. I'm cheating on my board. I'm not going to take the next guy on my board. I'm going to go. Kay Ferguson wouldn't let me pick with my heart on that one. I'm going to go an MIAA guy and go with James Letcher Jr. out of Washburn. Pretty good receiver. He's got a young quarterback this year, so maybe that's a bit of a gamble on my part. 927 yards receiving and 68 catches, 10 touchdowns. But definitely think he was going to get some carries maybe and some reverses. He's a heck of a return guy. And again, I don't think Bearcat fans will probably like either one of those. The two teams that beat us last year, I don't think, in back-to-back picks.
Well, this is way more important than actual games, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
All right, so that brings us back to K-Ferg for his 4th round selection.
Well, I am also going to go pretty far off the board here. As I was scouring rosters, I found someone who, at one point in time, would have been one of our top players prior seasons, who was returning from injury. Didn't play any last year because of injury. I'm going to go with Jalen Fry, running back from Bemidji State. Jalen in 2019, the NSIC co-offensive player of the week, all second team on offense, rushed for over 1,300 yards during that season. So really looking forward to seeing him bounce back. Should be pretty awesome. And thank you for the opportunity.
All right, so that brings it to my 4th round selection. And I am going to go. I'm going to lean on the Colorado Mines offense and go with quarterback John Matocha.
Matoka. It's all good.
Matoka.
There you go.
He had a little over 3,000 yards and 38 touchdowns last year, which is the highest remaining touchdown total on the board from last year's quarterbacks. So that's who I will be going with. And that brings up Muleman for his 4th round pick.
All right, I'm going to go down the board a little bit myself. I'm going with a running back, Mario Anderson of Newberry. 233 carries last year, 1,233 yards, and 11 touchdowns.
Okay. Okay. We're good there. So we are ready for Habs fans' 4th round pick.
Y'all have totally screwed up my board.
We're not here to make friends.
Obviously. I'm going to go in the Northern Sun Conference. Sioux Falls running back. Okay. Do I have to even try to pronounce the name? Thorough Reisdorfer?
Yeah, you did great.
Yep.
That's not a South Texas name, so I probably butchered it a bit. 1,100 yards, 10 rushing TDs last year, and I think he's set up for another big year.
Is a great pick, actually, in my opinion.
All right. That brings us to Running Cat's 4th round pick.
Well, I go to the homer pick from the former GNAC. Got to go at running back from Western Oregon, Omari Land, who had 10 touchdowns last year. 10 touchdowns, 945 yards in 10 games. I know that Western Oregon likes to run the ball, and they'll really lean heavily on a 60-year guy there.
He'll get his diploma and his AARP card in the same year.
All right. Wayne is up for his 4th round selection.
Well, the good news is I had 3 running backs lined up to pick, and they just all went in a row. So I'm going to go. I'm going to stay running back. I'm going to go with Angelo State's. I always butcher his last name, so I apologize. Nathaniel Omeyubu.
It's close, yes.
It was one of the reasons we didn't have him on the podcast because I felt bad that I always said his name wrong.
Yeah, I believe it's Omaebu, just like
Omaebu.
that.
Yeah. 1,000 yards last year, about 10 touchdowns, and I just like the way their offense runs in the running game. So hopefully he's young, so hopefully it improves this year.
Wayne, just a tip: when they play Central Washington, don't start him.
Okay.
That was a crusher game last year, but he had one 35-yard run, and I think he ended up on the game 70 yards.
All right. So we are back to Mountaineer for back-to-back picks. Finish round 4 and get to round 5.
Gotcha. So in the 4th round, I'm going to go out of the NSIC from Minnesota State, wide receiver Jalen Sample. Last year, he had 64 receptions for 1,047 yards and 8 receiving scores or touchdowns. And then with the following pick, let's see, I'll go with a running back, Jaden McKenzie from Westchester University.
All right. Perfect. We are ready for Wayne's 5th round pick.
I'm a little worried about this pick, but I like the way he plays. But of course, there's a lot of question marks around the offense. But I'm going David Durden, wide receiver out of West Florida. He had 787 yards receiving last year, but he did have 10 touchdowns. And it'll be obviously Austin Reed is in the FCS now, so it'll be interesting to see how that offense works. But I really like the way he plays.
All right. Running Cat up for round number 5.
Well, I'm going to jump into the GAC again and select a wide receiver from Southern Arkansas, Micah Small, who had 12 touchdowns, 1,012 receiving yards on 60 receptions. I think he'll be a focus in that offense.
Perfect. Habs fan up for round 5.
I'll take Micah Small. Oh, wait. That just got pulled, didn't it? I'm going to take out of Indiana, Pennsylvania. I'm going to take wide receiver Dwayne Brown at 802 yards receiving, 7 touchdowns, but he seems to get a few carries and scores a few touchdowns on the ground as well. Not so much last year, but I think the year before he did.
Perfect. That brings us to Muleman for his 5th round pick.
All right, I'm going way down the board here. I'm going for what I hope to be Harding's bell cow taking. I know they have a lot of running backs there, so bell cow may not be the right word, but taking Cole Chauncey's spot, Omar Sinclair. The junior last year ran in Chauncey's kind of shadow, 878 yards and 6 touchdowns. I'm looking for an increased workload out of him this year for the Bison.
He had a lot of yards per carry, real high yards per carry, I believe, didn't he? I don't know if you have access to the stats, but I remember doing my research that I thought, wow, that, it would be surprising because everybody, thinks about Chansey.
That's
when
part of the reason why I'm kind of going down the board, jumping over a lot of players, but sometimes you got to risk it to get the biscuit, so to speak.
All right, so that brings up my 5th round selection. And like I said, I like volume. So I'm going to go with running back Ali Muhammad from Minot State.
From Minot State?
Minot State. He had over 250 carries, 1,164 yards, 9 touchdowns, 23 carries a game. So that's who I will be taking with my 5th round pick, and that brings up Kayford.
We have a saying about Minot that it's why not Minot? Reason's the reason.
Well, there's quite a bit of value on the board right now, so I'm going to take a little bit of an insurance bet, and I'm going to select Braden Gleason from Emporia State as quarterback. He had 30 touchdown passes, 8 interceptions, over almost 3,400 yards passing. So he scored about 27 points a game. Seems to be a pretty good insurance bet.
Good pick, K. Ferg. I like that. Before I took my second quarterback there, he was. I had him probably ranked, I thought, a lot higher than a lot of other people did.
All right, so Fro is up for his 5th round pick, going into the 6th, and after he makes his first selection, we'll be halfway through the draft.
Oh wow!
Also, I'm going to go wide receiver, and I'm really happy that this guy's around because I almost picked him with my first pick in the 4th round, and I was just kind of praying that he would still be on the board. But Jaquay Jackson from Cal U, with one of their other receivers transferring, I think I'm hoping he gets a bit of a volume burst from. Not that last year's numbers were anything to sneeze at. Almost 60 catches, 744 yards, 8 touchdowns. So almost 6 catches a game. I like those receivers that get a lot of volume and hope the touchdowns come.
Perfect.
And then,
hey, Cal, should that go in the back of 5?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you
got a little ahead of myself.
You trying to take a pick away from me here?
We regret to inform you that a pick is no longer available.
Oh man, I knew
right,
it.
We're good now.
Well, to kick off the 6th round, I'm going to go with a guy. I'm going to go running back, and I hope this guy gets more carries with kind of the uncertainty that they have at quarterback in West Florida. I'm going to go with Shamari Mason. He didn't get a ton of carries last year, but he averaged like eight yards a carry, something like that, 1,015 yards, 10 touchdowns. I'm wondering with whoever wins that quarterback job if they're going to run the ball a lot more. That's what I'm hoping anyway.
Awesome. That brings us back to Kayford for round 6.
Well, things get really interesting here because there's quite a few guys I probably would choose a little bit later. I'm going to take a little bit of I'm going to take a little bit of interest here, and I'm going to select somebody who was on my team last year, who really didn't get a lot of respect, and that's E.J. Burgess from Franklin Pierce. Not a school that gets a lot of wins, but he was really the focal point in their offense last year. He had 221 rushing attempts. He had 10 touchdowns. there were games where he didn't really score, but he would still get 150, almost 200 yards a game. So he had 1,200 yards rushing despite the 10 touchdowns. So really looking forward to having him on my team again and seeing if they can improve that offensive line, like some of the folks online have said.
Has anyone noticed we're halfway through this now, and Greatness has not picked a CIA? Have you picked anybody from the CIAA?
Not yet.
Trying to get him in trouble.
Those are the ones that he has stashed for the last 3 rounds.
That's it. Yes, you're right.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, that brings it back to me for round 6. And kind of have a lot of choices at wide receiver. I am going to go with, man, K-Ferg's going to hate me right now. I'm going to take Lawrence King from Chowan. 51 catches, 658 yards, and 8 touchdowns last year. I know they're going to have a new quarterback this year. After K-Ferg's MVP of seemed like last 7 years finally graduated. And Bryce Witt. So I will hope that Lawrence King can get a good connection with the new quarterback. And so that's who I will be going with.
Yeah, this selection for Trawan. Nicely done.
That'll bring up Muleman.
Yeah, I'm checking something real quick.
Your check-in should have happened a long time ago. Come on now.
Hey, stop it. Stop it. I don't do this for a regular deal. So we're gonna.
Great. He got thrown off with all these different picks. We've been bouncing around all over.
Actually, Ferg, when you took Jalen Fry 2 picks before me, that started me in my tailspin. So
yes, it's revenge from last year.
I almost took him the round before, and I thought maybe I can sneak him in one more round. And
that's funny because I never do this, but I thought that was a good spot that Chris took him, and that proved to be correct. That that's where everybody was starting to sniff on him.
I think
absolutely a good spot. So yeah, I'm gonna take Preston Carson for wide receiver for the Southwest Baptist Bearcats. 61 catches, 867 yards, and 7 touchdowns, and an offense that likes to wing it around. So we'll take him here.
Awesome. We are ready for Havs fans' 6th round pick.
All right, I'm gonna take another wide receiver out of the Great Lakes Valley Conference? Quincy wide receiver Eugene Witherspoon. Only had 29 catches last year, but averaged almost 25 yards a reception, and almost half of those catches were touchdowns. So, nice home run player there.
Yeah, that's what I was considering with my wide receiver pick, but I was just worried that that's going to be tough to reproduce those ratios again. He needs more catches for me to be confident in him.
He's got the same quarterback coming back.
He had feast or famine games for me last year.
All right, that brings us to Running Cat's 6th round pick.
Okay, I'm struggling just a little bit here, but I'm gonna do one of my flyer picks, and I'm gonna take Casey Bauman from Augustana. He's a drop down from Montana State. Started 4 games for Montana State last year before Tommy Willott took over and led him to the national championship game. He's a Blaine High School kid that I've seen in Washington State championships. I think he's going to be a surprise for us.
Brandon's like the ESPN NFL draft guys on day 3, pulling up the non-FBS guys' tapes when they don't get drafted.
Hey, I wanted to impress somebody with that one. So
nice job.
Yeah.
All right, we are to Wayne's 6th round pick now.
I feel like I'm going to pick the wrong one, but I love Notre Dame. Always has a good running game. They have 2 good backs, but I'm going to go with Tyrus Dickerson. here. Like I said, they have a split backfield. He did have almost 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns last year. Both of those backs ran for over 5 yards a carry, so they're very athletic and very good. So I hope I picked the right one.
I was having the same struggle. That's why I didn't take either of them. All right. That brings us to Mountaineer for back-to-back picks.
With this pick, I'm going to go with Sidney Gibbs out of Shaw. Last year as a sophomore, he had, let's see. Oh, whoops, it just disappeared. My bad. I don't know. It looked like there was some good upside with his stats there. And then with the next pick, I'm going to go back to the RMAC, kind of a sleeper as my backup quarterback, kind of the sleeping giant of the RMAC out of Colorado Mesa, Karst Hunter, the quarterback. Mesa with the new coach, the CSU Pueblo defensive coordinator. A lot of upside, could be a potential RMAC offensive player of the year, kind of a dual threat player for the Mavericks. So that's why I'm going to go with him as my backup quarterback.
Perfect. And we are back to Wayne for his 7th round pick.
Okay, hold on. It's narrowed down to 2 people. I just love his touchdowns. So I'm going way down the list. Wide receiver from Colorado School of Mines, Josh Johnston. And we know Matoka's Zeman's going to get his touchdowns, but Matoka throws for a ton as well. So that seems to be one of his favorite targets. So I'm going with him.
Awesome. Running Cat, 7th round pick.
Okay, I am going to go back to the NSIC, and I'm going to pick a 55 receptions, 9 touchdown, Logan Utect from Augustana.
Right.
All right.
All right, that brings us to Habs fans, 7th round pick.
All right. I guess I'm going to take Melvin Blanks, running back from Gannon. 1,187 yards of rushing and 8 TDs last year as a junior.
All right, Muleman, 7th round selection.
Yeah, trying to figure out why there's a reason here. Yeah, whatever. I'll take a flyer here. I'm gonna go running back from Wayne State, Myron Harris, 131 carries, 1,028 yards, and 9 touchdowns last year.
All right, that brings it to me for my 7th round selection. And I am going to go with, there's a lot of good selections out there still. I am going to go back to the well from a pick I made last year and then ended up dropping, and take running back Emmanuel Wilson at Fort Valley. He had 147 carries, 835 yards, 7 touchdowns as a sophomore. But he was a star as a freshman. So I'm hoping he gets back to that situation. So that will be my 7th round selection. And that will bring up Kayford for his 7th round pick.
Love it. I love it. Thank you. Thank you for recognizing his greatness. Well, I am going to support my top quarterback with his wide receiver in crime, Jordan Kent. who was a freshman last year, had 734 receiving yards, 8 touchdowns. So, might as well go ahead and pick up all the Southwest Baptist points that I can.
All right, that brings us to Fro for back-to-back picks.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
When
that's where
somebody
it,
starts their selections with a sigh, they're not that confident in what they're doing at that
yeah, that's pretty on the mark. I mean, you could just say that about me during this whole process. So how confident am I? I don't know.
point.
But I'm gonna pick the other half of the backfield in Notre Dame that Wayne didn't take in Idris Lawrence. Had a really good freshman season, 828 yards, only 6 touchdowns, but I'm hoping maybe he can get a few of those away from his backfield mate there. But Notre Dame's going to run the ball, so hopefully both guys get plenty of looks and carries. And that wraps up the 7th round. And with the first pick in the 8th round, it seemed, I don't know, I feel like it's a homer pick every time I pick an MIAA guy, but I'm going to go with another MIAA player. I'm going to go with a wide receiver out of Fort Hays State, Manny Ramsey, who I think is the guy he didn't have a lot of touchdowns last year, but he had a lot of receptions. And so with a bounce back year maybe from his quarterback, and again, I'm going kind of along the volumes. Hopefully some of those touchdowns come.
All right, that brings us to K Ferg's 8th round selection.
Well, that's all right with the homer picks because we've now reached a point in which
Here we
I'm
go.
going to start unloading the stash. Okay, from the MIAA to the CIAA. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I am going to take Reggie Bryant, wide receiver from Johnson C. Smith, little old Johnson C. Smith. Now, this individual is going to take up a lot of yards, and he's got a quarterback who transferred in who is proven. So I look forward to seeing his stat doing even better than he did last year. He had in 8 games, he had 49 receptions, 600, almost 700 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Really looking forward to seeing what he can do.
Hope you're muted.
Kyle, I believe you're muted.
I am still muted. Dog was barking. All right, so my 8th round selection.
Better than biting.
I couldn't verify if he's actually playing this year, so I'm leaning on hoping he is. And I will take wide receiver Jamal Jones from D2 newcomer Allen University. He had 52 catches, almost 800 yards, and 6 touchdowns last year.
I believe you're in good shape. I believe he was one of the representatives for Allen at the SIAC Media Day.
Perfect. That makes me feel a lot better then.
Yeah, I believe that to be correct.
Kyle, I like all this HBCU flavor you got going on right now. Got a little spice in there. You guys are becoming believers. Nicely done. Love it. Love it.
We saw every time you take anyone from the HBCU areas, defense seems to be a little bit of an option in those games.
Bowie State's going to be offended. I'm telling you.
Careful. Careful.
You mean, are you trying to compare us to the PSAC?
Maybe more like a Big 12.
Right.
All right, that brings up Muleman for his 8th round selection.
All right. So I'm going to go with Shepherd running back. Split carries last year, sophomore Ronnie Brown, 106 carries, 956 yards. But he had another almost 7 points, fantasy points a game through the air. So I'm going to go with that dual threat running back, Ronnie Brown for Shepherd.
All right. That brings us to Havs fans' 8th round pick.
This kind of surprised me. I'm going to take Jamar Tompkins running back out of Valdosta State. Even though he's probably the second most productive running back in that backfield, he's got 3,280 yards rushing for his career. So he's been solid all the way through.
Remember, Valdosta State, they had a quarterback rush for 1,000 yards and 2 running backs rush for 1,000 yards last year.
Yep.
Yeah, well, he was one of the running backs that had 1,000 yards. So he's not going to get overlooked, I don't think.
Well, since I think we're probably out of people from Valdosta that would be selected, they're going to be better on defense too. So I think their offensive numbers will be a little bit better because they're going to get the ball back quicker and have more possessions. Although sometimes that means it doesn't mean what you think it would mean, because it could mean the starters are out in the third instead of the fourth. So that that might be an issue there too. But I think they're going to be better on defense this year. So I'm sorry to interject reality into the fantasy draft. Sorry, guys. It will not happen again.
We don't talk about defense in the fantasy league.
Come on, man.
That brings us to Running Cats, 8th round pick.
I'm going to take a little bit of a stretch here. Freshman from last year, wide receiver, had 28 receptions, 630 yards, 8 touchdowns. And he's the number 2 guy, but I think he's an up-and-comer, Jaheim McGuire out of American International in the NE10. I think he's going to end up surpassing his running mate there on the other side. They're 2 top receivers, but I got money on the freshman stepping it up.
All right. That brings us to Wayne for his 8th round pick.
I'm really upset because I thought with how low Ronnie Brown was on the running back list, no one would know that he had 700 yards receiving also, and I could sneak him in here. So that was a great pick. But I also always love Virginia Union backfield, and he does have the most touchdowns left on the list. So I'm going running back out of Virginia Union, Jada Byers, who had 12 touchdowns last year, 910 yards rushing.
I respect it.
All right. That brings us, after a bit of a wait, back to Mountaineer for back-to-back picks.
So with my pick, I'm going to go my first player from the Lone Star Conference. I'm going to go with Kylan Harrison, the wide receiver from Midwestern State. I think with the expansion of the Lone Star, there could be some favorable defensive matchups for him. And then with my next pick, I'm going to go down a little bit, a fellow Coloradoan from Fort Hays State, running back Adrian Soto. As a sophomore last year, he had 123 carries for 8 touchdowns and 814 yards. I think he'll have a little bit of an uptick in production at Fort Hays. So, yeah, those are my 2 picks.
Good receiver out of the backfield, too. That's a good pick.
He is.
We are back to Wayne for his 9th round selection.
Okay. I don't know how often it happens that you take a backup quarterback, but I feel like Grand Valley State's going to be one of the best teams in the nation. So I'm going to take Cade Peterson. Especially, I like his rushing ability. Kind of a dual threat guy, and they love to pound the ball. So, yeah, I feel like someone on that team has to go in our draft. So I think he's the best guy to go.
Perfect. That brings us to Running Cats, 9th round selection.
I'm going to dig deep into that underclassman role again. I'm going to take was a last year freshman, up and comer, I believe. Didn't have the huge amount of yards, but I'm going to take Ike Brown from Lane in the SIIC. I know that I have a propensity to take flyers in those last couple of rounds, but they've paid off before. 1 out of 4 times.
Perfect. That brings us to Habs fan, 9th round selection.
Well, it worked for me at running back last year, so I'm going to match up teammates at wide receiver and take Derek Lockhart out of transferred to IUP this year. Last year at 36 receptions, 630 yards, and 9 touchdowns in just 7 games. So he's the highest scoring receiver left on the board.
Perfect. Muleman's 9th round selection is up. Make sure you unmute.
There
you
I
go.
like that pick. Oh gosh, I'm going to go with the highest receiver on the board left, Anthony Brown, St. Anselm. 56 receptions, 812 yards, and 9 touchdowns.
All right, so that brings up my 9th round pick, and I also need a backup quarterback, and I also like the dual threat guys, and I'm not sure how to say his name, which is no surprise, but I will take Arkansas Monticello's Damilan Brown. Does that sound right, Brandon?
I'm not familiar with that.
No.
So.
He had almost 2,400 yards and 17 touchdowns passing, and then had another 640 yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground. Hoping to get some Scott Buisan vibes out of him. Scott Buisan, by the way, was the very first pick ever in this league's history.
Is that right?
Way back in 2008, I believe.
From Monticello as well, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So we are to K Ferg for his 9th round pick.
Well, this is where I start taking some real gambles. And this individual is a transfer into the CIAA from the South Atlantic. It's a running back, Niger Peoples, who was formerly at Wingate. He's now at Chowan.
Ooh. Okay.
That would have been good information to know earlier.
Yeah.
Chris.
That's those ringers that you brought in here, Kyle.
World's smallest violin.
John Q. Public don't stand a chance. Oh, wait a minute. There was 2 John Q. Publics in the championship game last year.
All right. We are to Fro to finish the 9th round and start the 10th and final round of the draft.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go running back and receiver, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'll go with running back. I'll go another MIAA guy, another double threat. I liked Adrian Soto. He was maybe who I was going to pick here, but I'll go with Emporia State's Kanan Brooks. I really like Emporia's offense, and he's kind of a dual threat guy. So then that takes me into the start of the final round here. And I want to go receiver, but I'm not really sure. I think I'm just going to go volume, not necessarily touchdowns, and go out of the GLVC and McKendree's Jacob Bachman. He only scored 3 touchdowns, but he had over 80 catches. That's over 7 a game and 857 yards. So maybe he'll get some more touchdowns for me this year.
All right. We are back to K Ferg for his final selection.
Well, I'm going to go way off the board here because if you're a championship caliber mindset, you kind of have to take some risk. So I'm going to select who I think is going to be the starting quarterback for West Florida, and that's going to be Byron Jarrett, who was a JUCO transfer. He was a JUCO last year, so we're gonna take a chance here. We're gonna see, because if it really pans out, it kind of blocks one of you all from taking.
I was wanting to know, or wondering if somebody was going to pick him. So He's a junior college kid. I believe he went to like Iowa Central or something like that.
Yep, went to Iowa
but
Central.
But he's from down there in Georgia or Florida somewhere. So.
Yeah, did exceptionally well there too. So.
Yep.
All right, so that brings it to my final selection, and I am going to go another guy that I'm not positive if he's going to be playing this year. Don't have verification, but I guess I will take wide receiver Anthony Lowe from Tiffin. He had 70 catches, 919 yards, and 9 touchdowns last year. And I'm going to hope he sees similar production this year for the Dragons. So that brings us to Muleman for his final selection.
Okay. So this one here's one that I didn't email on, and I'm actually taking a flyer here. A freshman that may not play. Small guy, but last year Cody Schrader was an animal for me in Truman State's offense. And I have broadcast covered this kid in multiple games. We're going with Jace Reynolds from Truman State. Rushed for over 7,000 yards in his high school career, and had over 2,000 yards his junior and senior year. And the only reason he didn't go over 2,000, his sophomore and junior year, the only reason he didn't go over 2,000 his senior year is because his younger brother came in and probably rushed for another 1,000 yards. So Jace Reynolds is my last pick.
All right. That brings us to Habs fans' 10th round pick.
Okay, I'm going to go with a dual threat quarterback, Nick Bohn, Bohn, out of Wayne State, in the Northern Sun, not the Great Lakes Conference. Threw for 1,900 yards, 14 touchdowns, rushed for almost 600, and 10 more touchdowns for running the ball. So,
All right. There. Got him there. All right. We are to Running Cats' final selection.
My first thing to say is, Hasfan, you are a dog. I thought I had him stashed, and I was sitting there saying I only got one more.
well, that's good because you took my wide receiver earlier, so we're even.
Neener on you. Okay, well, I got to do the at least one super homer pick, and I'm going to go with last year freshman running back, surprise guy from Central Washington, Tyler Flanagan. He had 6 touchdowns, only had 89 rushes, 578 yards, but he's kind of the boom and bang part of the equation with Rashad Bodie. But as a freshman, had a fantastic year coming in halfway. I think he's going to be one of those guys that really blossoms.
All right, that brings us to Wayne for his final pick of the draft.
Sorry, I was on mute. I think I am going to close out my picks with a wide receiver from Lenoir Rhind, DeAndre Lester. He had 718 yards and 6 touchdowns last year. I know that they're going to be relying on McGee heavily, but we always seem to see a wide receiver emerge on Lenoir Rhind, and I think he's going to be an exciting one to watch.
Awesome. So that brings us to the last pick of the draft for Mountaineer.
So to bring it home, I'm going to pick my 4th RMAC player. It's going to be wide receiver Tristan Smith out of Colorado School of Mines. Tons of opportunities there in Golden for the Orediggers to produce with John Matoka. So,
Hey, Brandon, I would just mention that the first week, there's always like some really strong players that come out in the first week that you just don't know anything about. Mm-hmm. And that starts a mad rush to the transfer portal for us. and it starts swapping people out. So that's another factor as well.
That's awesome. So, well, guys, it actually has been a lot of fun. I'm glad we did it this way. You guys did a great job.